Volpe Report, brought to you in part by Village Overhead Door in Southold. Victor Giannini, author of Counselor, the book Counselor, International Executive Protection. Michael Evans, author of The Real Matrix and Waters Crest Winery. Good morning, Gianna.
Good morning, Bruce. So happy to be here with you this morning. We've got Eric Feil from Dan's Papers with us this morning. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Very well. Before we came on the air, Eric and I were talking a bit about like the sensationalism of politics and how I loved what you said. Everything, like every minute of what you see out there is packaged and like ready to view. I was bringing up about, which I think I mentioned last week, about the ties, you know, or the dress. Go down to when they walk out on the stage. If you notice, someone's wearing red and someone's wearing blue, and it's not always the Democrats with the blue and the Republicans with the red, but they never accidentally wear the same color. You know, and I always wonder, like, oh, what is there somebody that's like, oh, he's wearing blue, you gotta go with red.
Actually, red ties have always been are seen as power ties.
Uh-huh.
And someone who's like the alpha male, which, like Senator Albert Gore, former Vice President Albert Gore, alpha male, wore red ties. You know, and that's, you know, you wear the red tie because it makes a statement.
That's why you always wear a red tie, Bruce.
I used to always wear red ties and red socks.
Is that why Wee Herman wears a red bow tie?
He has other issues.
So I'm very excited to have Eric in here. Great writer, awesome dude.
Oh, well, thank you.
I love Dan's. I've worked with Dan's Papers for many years now. I haven't in the last couple years. I used to shoot for them primarily, but I lost my last rig, shark diving on the Sea Turtle off the coast of Montauk. I have a new rig now, but I haven't worked with them in a hot minute. But Best the Best is out. Is voting still open?
Yes, voting is open until 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds until this Monday, October 17th.
Oh my gosh, so and it's Dan's BOTB.com, and there's an app as well. You can see the winners. I was particularly interested in bartender as someone that's bartending, and I was very happy to see right now Joe from Grace and Grit is in the lead. I had the pleasure and honor of working with him at a wedding this summer with Grace and Grit, and I learned how to make Smoky Old Fashions, and I thought that was really cool. He was using 200-year-old wood to sort of smoke into the glass to pour on top of it, which I thought was so awesome. And then I was surprised because I thought that Moustache or Long Island would be, or Greenport would be in the lead for breweries. I wasn't familiar with the brewer. It was something like Eastern Frontal. I've never heard of this brewery.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The way that, you know, Best of the Best will work is that the nomination period goes on. We started actually this year earlier. We wanted to give people who are here all summer, people who are, local obviously is the most important thing, I think, for all of us. And we're here all year. You're here all year.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who come out here and are, quasi-local. They're summer locals. They'll come out for 2 or 3 months at a time, and they'll experience things out here as well. So we opened up the nominating phase earlier this year. So the nominating phase went through the summer, and then the voting began. So if you really did have a favorite bartender, a favorite store you went to, a favorite ice cream cone you had, whatever it was, you could nominate that through the summer. And then the voting phase now really just kind of encapsulates all of that, the larger group there. Now everyone really can support their little favorite. So, for example, you were talking about the brewery here. So, I'll go back for a minute to Joe at Grace and Grit. It's funny. You were talking about what he taught you there with that Smoky Old Fashioned.
Yes.
I really think that's a great example of what makes Best of the Best special are these little details that you know about this bartender, that someone will know about a chef, that someone will know about someone who works in a store. What makes a children's clothing store the best of the best? Is it the merchandise? Is it this one great salesperson that helps you? To know that and have people who go there all the time, that's really what makes this kind of thing stand out, is people know these businesses and individuals.
That is it's so East End, and that's what I love. Because you can go actually on a global scale, especially with the way the internet works now. One of my standbys that I really stand by is it's a small world getting smaller every day.
Exactly.
You know, I heard from Tony Meras Sr. Down at Papa Nick's down the street, the story of how he and his late wife Kitty, how he proposed to her, and it was so funny because he was with this woman that I was telling her about. My father has this great idea that he wants to drive north until the road ends. And my whole thing is, Dad, I don't want you going alone.
Right.
Because if you're going to disappear, at least I want to be with you. You know, like, so I'm not wondering my whole life, like, what happened to my dad. Because it gets a little weird when I'm sure where the road ends. And the woman that was sitting at the bar, she like owns that piece of property. It's been in her family for generations. And she was like, yeah, you know, where that ends, it loops around this island called San Breton Island or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, and I was like, it's not just, you know, it's very East End to, like, for example, you meet someone and you hear a story and you know these details, or, you know, oh, yeah. But it's like, you can go, it goes further than that.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so cool. But that's like, and did you ever find like who that, oh yeah, but by the way, again, Eric Feil, Dan's Papers, BOTB.com. If you're just joining us now, voting closes at 11:59 on Monday, October 17th. Write-in voting is closed. So how long could you write in?
So write-in voting went until the middle of September 14th.
Was that like the nomination phase?
And that was the nomination phase. So
okay.
The votes that you acquired during nominating still count toward your total.
Okay.
And now it's just, you know, the click of the button. The very easy, simple voting process is on there. Because it gets a little bit unwieldy with all the businesses, a lot of new businesses coming in. You know, a new restaurant can open up in June, and all of a sudden it's someone's favorite taco. And
right.
So but if it's a brand new restaurant, we want to give it time to get nominated and get in there.
So it's very funny because we got to have you back during the summer when we're doing the nominating thing, because that was one of the things I was saying. I think Evan Bucholz from Brix Rye, which is funny because Joe from Grease and Grit is a student of his in a way, but the student has become the master now. But you know, I remember saying, I don't know how you get nominated, but he is the best. And I had worked for you guys and have. So I would love to promote the nominations next summer, because like I always wanted to know. And I think by the way, it's very smart. This has been a couple of years now that you moved over to Device, right? Now, I remember it used to be, how did it used to be?
Back in the day, you know, I'm going to say way back when, there was actually a paper ballot in Dan's Papers. And
nice.
you would get it every week, and I'm sure, you know, a reasonable facsimile was accepted, and you would check off your votes, and you would either mail it in or bring it into the office. And there would be a flood of people coming in, dropping off these paper ballots, and they had
taking the whole shipment that you brought to, you know, whatever restaurant.
Exactly right. And people would have to count these ballots. I mean, it was like Dade County all over again. And so a few years ago, when we built our new website, but 5 years ago, Dan's Papers launched the first iteration of its new website, and then danspapers.com got another relaunch about 3 or 4 years ago. And that's when we built an online voting mechanism, which is really just the way everything has to be done these days. I mean, Major League Baseball, I believe they still have those little punch cards for the All-Star game at the game, but everyone does it online.
I remember this was after online. So there was, first you could vote online, but then whatever following year, you did it by device, because people were using junk email addresses.
Well, exactly, and that's really been a big challenge for us, and it was where we really focused in. So you can't
I thought that was smart though, because now it's by device,
and it's a real email address. It has to get verified back. There's no robot voting. Everybody is a real one. Now, yes, if you have 3 email addresses, you know, Gianna at Gmail, Gianna at Yahoo, you can use all three of those, and that's going to happen. But this is all monitored. We will know if someone has created 100 email addresses.
Right.
And then we monitor that because we want this really to be a true reflection of what the people are voting for.
Love it.
Yeah, and this year we also launched, to really give people another way to vote and to make it easy, to make it accessible. We launched our Dance Papers app this summer, and on the app is not only access to the great stories that Dan writes, South of the Highway, our great calendar, but it has the best of the best voting right on there. So it's in your hand, and you can vote as you're doing right now, as I can say.
Yeah, I'll never forget my first day living on the East End. And I picked up Dan's, and I didn't know yet that the news was not news. And I read one of what's the guy's name from Shelter Island?
Oh, Old Man McGumbus.
Oh my God! I read an Old Man McGumbus, and I was like, what the heck? What did I do? What did I do? I was like, there's guys running around on tanks. I don't know where I am.
Well, that's really one of the funny things about Dan's that I love and that drew me here and that draws so many people to it, is this unique mix, and I think it's really the best way to say it, of content. I mean, there are real stories, there's real news, but what sets it apart is where else are you going to read, like you said, about Old Man McGumbus, about, I don't know if you remember a few years ago, the story about the lions that Dan wrote.
Oh my gosh.
To take care of the deer population.
My God, that got so much play.
It was our biggest story. Incredibly, I was fielding calls, no joke, New York Magazine, Fox Business News, the LA Times calling me and asking, is this real?
Right.
And then the answer you have to give, of course, is, well, do you know Dan's papers?
And it's so funny because that brings me to something that I would love to touch on, which is viral marketing, especially you see it a lot in movies. Do you remember Cloverfield when that came out?
Oh, absolutely.
And they made fake social media profiles.
Oh, sure.
For the characters. That is something that's I wonder in the very near future if there's going to be actual law written that to kind of like where you have to stamp something, because viral marketing, I feel, is kind of getting out of hand. Particularly if there is a connection between the quote-unquote clown sightings,
right,
and all of that starting that whole trend. Mm-hmm. If the It movie is behind that,
right,
I feel like that, because I'm not sure if it's real, but if people are dying, if people are getting hurt, it's sort of interesting because it's there's this line that's being blurred. And we were talking before about, the way the journalism industry is changing. And, is it going too far? And when is too far? Now, we've got to hit the break. Eric, I'm so glad that you came up. It was such a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Everyone, before we get back from the break, Dan's, BOTB.com. Get your votes in there. I want to know what the best of the best we've got to offer out here. And we'll be back.
Thanks, Gianna.